Test. Now.
No, not yet.
Nothing. Yeah,
There
right.
you go. Matt, I'm going to pause the inquiry into that situation.
Welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Bethlehem Planning Commission. My name is Rob Malassi. I'm the chair of the meeting. Other Planning Commission members in attendance this evening include, to my left, Matt Malozzi, and to his left, Eddie Burgos. We ask everyone, please turn your cell phone off or silent at this time. We have a small agenda. We will proceed through today's agenda items as listed. Each applicant will have a chance to present their project to the commission. Following that presentation, city staff will provide an overview and give a recommendation. Then the planning commission members will have an opportunity to direct questions related to the project to both the applicant and city staff. Following planning commission discussion, interested parties will have an opportunity to comment on or ask questions. All interested parties will be asked to give their name and address for the record. We also have a sign-in sheet up near the podium. We ask you to please sign in. Please try to keep your comments, questions to a 5-minute time limit. We ask that all comments be related to the project, proposal under review, and all comments be related to the land use issues of the project as they are listed on the agenda today. When there are a significant number of interested parties, we ask that members be concise and avoid repeating any previously made assertions. After all interested parties are done having an opportunity to speak, planning commission members have a final opportunity to deliberate. The review of the planning commission is based on provisions of the Salno zoning ordinance and other municipal ordinances as applicable. Decisions will be based on these ordinances, recommendation of city staff, pertinent public comment, and the public good. This time, our first agenda item is the approval of the September 8th, 2022 minutes. Any questions, discussion on the minutes? Can we have a motion to approve, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting of the Planning Commission from September 8th, 2022.
Matt Malozzi with a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Eddie Burgos, roll, please.
Mr. Malosky.
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi.
Yes.
Mr. Burgos.
Yes.
Motion carries. We will move on with our only land development plan on today's agenda at 1178th Avenue, Tower Place. Will the applicant please introduce yourself and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dwayne Wagner. I'm here tonight representing HRP Management, the owner of the property at 1178th Avenue, the former Martin Tower campus. I'd like to start with an overview of the project, what we're here tonight to discuss, and then I have some land development plans, what we can review, as well as responses to the various comment letters we have from the City of Bethlehem Planning Department, the Environmental Advisory Council, and the Monocacy Creek Watershed Association. So the intent of the plan being reviewed this evening is to subdivide the current 52-acre parcel into 3 separate building lots. Lot 1 will consist of approximately 3.93 acres. And we'll have a 60,747 square foot 3-story medical office building constructed on it with 293 parking spaces provided. Lot 2 would be a 2.61 acre lot with a 40,867 approximate building constructed on it, 3-story medical office building. They would be home to the same tenant, same uses, medical office and related uses. Lot 3 would consist of approximately 45 acres, and that would be future development, and that would be submitted at a future date. So today's request is for lots 1 and 2 that'll each be developed into medical office building with a parking lot, site lighting, landscaping, stormwater control facilities, sanitary stormwater connections to the existing utilities fronting on the property. Lot 3 will be developed in the future, at which time will submit to the city and the appropriate outside agencies. And at that time, we would look at a revised overall master plan if necessary when that submission takes place. So I'll start. I have the plans on the screen as well as some handouts for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In no particular order, I'm just making my way down the line, so it's- And I brought a board to put up, helps anybody present. This is marked as slide A on your sheets there, in the lower right corner. This just shows an existing aerial of the condition of the site. This is where the former tower stood. Garage was down here. The annex building was here. The printer and the CH&R and all this was parking lots. So the area we're talking about today is up in the northwest corner. And then this would be the balance of the site for lot 3. This is a little cleaner plan. Plan B shows you the 3 lots as they're created: lot 1, lot 2, and then this is lot 3. Lot 1 and 2 will be serviced by extending Plaza Drive across from the CVS entry into the property to service the 2 lots. And we'll be completing the 4th leg of the lighted intersection that's there now. We're working in conjunction with the city engineers, traffic, and PennDOT. This is an enlargement of the area, colorized plan C on your package there. This just shows the location of the building. This is lot 1. Lot 1 is the northern lot. Lot 2 is the southern lot. Lot 1 has the 60,000-foot building on it, parking surrounding the building. Employees and clients come in through Plaza Drive East and then distribute to either building wherever they're going. And then the 40,000-foot building is on the south end of the 2 lots. Then there'll be a connection out to Tower Drive, which is sort of just an overflow secondary access point. There's another access point on Eaton Avenue that's existing that came into the approach of the tower that was there originally. But we believe most of the traffic is going to end up coming in at the lighted interchange, which seems to make sense for that. Rendering of the 2 buildings. The Lehigh Valley Hospital will be going there. Building 1, lot 1 here, and lot 2. This is taken a perspective from across the street from 8th and Eaton on the northwest corner of the site, looking towards the southeast. Some elevations, they're not as pretty to look at as the perspective rendering, but it's their typical prototype building. You've seen similar buildings that they built recently. They all got their sort of marquee style that they use, consistent with other buildings in the building. This is the other building. So you can see they're both fairly similar. Signage on the side, their logo. Then I have the comment letters. If you'd like me to go through those, I can address each comment one by one if you'd like that. If you have any questions on the plans, you're going to wait till we go through whatever the...
Any questions for Mr. Wagner, if anyone from the Planning Commission as it relates to the plan that he just presented?
I should note these 2 lots are consistent with the master plan that was approved in 2019.
Right. And I just want to, before we move forward, remind anyone here in attendance today that, we are acting on the land development subdivision plan of these 2 lots. Certainly, this is a tract of land that is obviously very well known, and a lot of people would like to know moving forward, what the direction is. As we all do, we're not here tonight for that. Okay, so we're here to act on the lots 1 and 2 as Mr. Wagner presented. Any questions for Mr. Wagner concerning Mr. Malozzi?
If you don't mind, I wasn't sure whether, because we got some of those in our packets. Can you, the elevations, can you point out like what's facing which way? Like what faces Eaton and what faces,
This would be,
Shane,
this would be facing
Eighth?
Eighth Avenue, and then this would be facing south. So it'd be facing the south end. This is the main entrance, so this is facing Eighth Avenue.
Okay.
This is the south facing, this would face the interior of the site.
Mhm.
Then this would be facing Eaton Avenue,
North.
and
Is it safe to say, Mr. Wagner, that the rendering of slide D, as in dog, is at the corner of 8th and Eaton?
yes. Yeah, this,
Now-
yeah, sorry.
That might give a better,
Yeah, this helps. This is how the buildings would be oriented. They're gonna have some signage along Eaton Avenue here. And then this is Eighth Avenue. So this is what fronts on Eighth Avenue here. And then going down this way, they'd have some signage on this building. So as you drive in, you know where you're going to. And this will also have signage on Eighth Avenue. And then coming up Eighth Avenue, heading north towards Eaton, get some signage on that side of the building as well.
Thank you.
Better look at it.
Before we address anything from the, I'll give Ms. Heller an opportunity to point anything out from the October 7th memo from the city, and then we can go into some of the things that were, Ms. Heller?
Sure. So it's true, we're only voting on the subdivision and then the 2 medical office buildings. And these 2 medical office buildings were reflected in the original master plan that you saw back in 2019. So keeping that in mind, there are some specific comments that relate only to the medical office buildings, but there are a couple of under general, largely they're under general, but larger big picture comments that relate to the site overall that we want to make sure that the applicant keeps in mind as the full build out moves forward. So the Public Works engineering comments really note that there still are some approval letters and reports that are outstanding, which is typical for a project like this. They're working with DEP and LVPC on that. We will receive those. The comments consider the fees. There are some comments that still relate with traffic. Ms. Wells notes that 8th Avenue is a state road, and so there is a PennDOT HOP that will need to be received. Her office has been working closely with PennDOT on that. She's also been working closely with Lanta because there will be some additional bus shelter improvements that go along with the plan. So those will be incorporated in the design as it moves forward. Another comment, just that all the pavement markings are in thermoplastic. The electrical inspector is working on some of the lighting comments. The coordinating again with HOP and their traffic consultant for some of the signal upgrades. There's some comments about landscaping, adding vegetation in front of the buildings and to the parking lots. There's some cleanup comments from zoning. I don't think that those are anything that can't be met. We did meet with Mr. Wagner about some of these comments. They did make some changes regarding pedestrian connections from the sidewalk and the bus stops to the buildings. They've been making changes again to the handicap ramps and things like that. But some of those comments are still in the letter until those details are cleaned up. And then under general comments, that's where we have some of the more big picture comments about parking and impervious coverage, the climate action plan, the trail system, some of the connections that we'd like to see in the project as it gets built out. The Monocacy Way Trail is been a priority for the city, and this project directly abuts the trail to the west. And then we also include, just as an FYI for the developer, that this is included within the CRIZ. It's designated for CRIZ, and they'll need to keep in touch with our Economic Development Office on those matters as well. So we don't see anything in here that's unmanageable. Some of the things still need to be cleaned up, but we're working with the applicant on that.
And Mr. Wagner, there's pointing some of the things that Ms. Heller pointed out, the highlights here, fine with meeting those in compliance in terms of obviously the stormwater management and working with DEP underneath the engineering. That's something that has to be done. So I'm assuming, yes, that is not an issue, along with the miscellaneous traffic issues. Mr. Malozzi, one of our members, is very much involved with Lanta, and I'm sure he would be very excited to know that we are going to have, and we're working in coordination with them to have a Lanta stop
We
there
spoke
as well.
with Molly I spoke with her several times, and she provided some information for the details for the bus shelter pads. And then we'll be working with her on bus shelter equipment and installation.
Good. And also the pavement markings that Ms. Heller pointed out in terms of being thermoplastic. We're
Yes.
okay with that as well.
If I could just
Yes,
add one
Ms.
thing too,
Heller.
I don't want to not draw your attention. Also, we have a letter from the EAC that is signed by Lynn Rothman. And we did get a comment letter also from the Monocacy Creek Watershed Association. And I believe I know Lynn Rothman is here. I believe we have a representative from the Watershed Association as well. So their comments are in here related to this project as well.
Kind of tying in with that, some of the things that were mentioned, Mr. Wagner, under general, was the tying in of the trails. And I know initially back in 2019, when we kind of had an idea of the master plan, that was something that we discussed. Is that moving forward? You're fine with tying that all together? I
Yes.
believe in the back there, that would
Along
Actually,
Burnside.
Connection at the
Correct.
on the east end that comes
Yes.
down into Burnside.
Yes.
And as well as tying in at the east end of Shannersville Road, Eaton Avenue, as that's redeveloped with Lot 3. With
Yes.
that plan, that's when we would show some detail for that.
okay.
But we've talked to the administration as well as Darlene in her office, and we'll be helping to connect or
Right.
provide some assistance in that betterment.
Is it also an ongoing thing you're working with the city in terms of landscape, some of the things that were mentioned here in forestry and whatnot?
Yeah, we're
kind
gonna
of
we're gonna work with as we get through Lot 3 with the trees that were taken down. They'll be incorporated. Right now, I believe it's 1-for-1 in addition to what's required under the ordinance. So that's where they'll be installed within Lot 3. Right now, the two lots that you're looking at have the landscape as required by the ordinance, but the trees that came down will be part of Lot 3. And when it comes to some of the island plantings, we'll work with the forester on that, because one of the things we're concerned about is the snow when it gets piled up that can kill the low vegetation. So we'll see if there's something hardier we could put in there and something that doesn't get impacted by the tree canopies shading and stunting growth. But we'll work with you and the forester on that.
And obviously, with any new construction like this, you have the opportunity to make sure that we're kind of hitting the key points, especially brought up by Mr. Rothman in the EAC in terms of new construction, making sure energy efficient, using all the materials that'll hopefully.
Yeah, we're going to work through that with as the buildings are designed. But obviously, the more energy efficient we can make the building, the better the operating economics are for the owner as well. So we're going to try and incorporate what we can there, as well as EV charging. We don't have any shown on the plan. And that's a bit by design. There are spaces to the north and south of each building that are immediately adjacent to the structures. I'll show you down here, where it provides the opportunity to add the EV charging stations along this side of the building, this side of the building here, anywhere really adjacent. It's easy to run out a connection for that, but they have to figure out the functional operation of parking and how it works. Is there a demand for it? Where would they best be suited so it provides the best flexibility for their clients coming in and out? So
Right.
but it would be, we do have the ability to add those in the future. Like I said, the design and construction of the building will take into consideration energy efficient opportunity for it.
Ms. Heller, anything else from the memo? Anything else from the city there?
I don't have anything additional right now.
Any questions as it pertains to the October 7th memo from anyone in the Planning Commission? Mr. Malozzi.
More of curiosity from the city's comments. Under sanitary, second section on the letter, tapping fees do not apply to this, or am I reading number 1 correctly?
Yes,
Uh,
Basil.
Based on the previous building that was there, tapping fee for the current does not apply because of the size. When they want to apply for the lot number 3, this might change based on the future plan.
So like the EDUs are already set aside for that site. So there's a lot, I assume.
Yeah, based on whatever they're submitting right now, they're still way under what it used to be before.
Mhm.
So that's why they're not charged now. When they plan for lot 3 with the new planning, they're probably going to be more. And this is when it will be recalculated and they'll be charged for the all additional.
Thank you. And along those lines, is this going through full sewage planning? Didn't get exemption?
It did go for now, but it will have to go for Model 3 when it comes to the future planning for lot 3.
For future, okay, because I saw that was a condition here, and I thought for something this size, they'd get an exemption from full planning. So we're still waiting for DEP approval?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's PennDOT, DEP, and then the NPDES also from DEP, so 3 major conditions, okay. And was a landscape plan submitted and reviewed?
Yes.
So I don't think that was part of our pack, I was just curious to see.
Yeah, the whole plan submission was 53 pages. So we just called out some sheets that we thought were the most pertinent, and that's what we forwarded. But we did not forward the landscape sheet.
Okay.
I don't know. Do you have that?
I do. I can drop it on a thumb drive if you'd like all 53 sheets, or do you want to pull it up? Would you like to see it?
If it's available, because a lot of the comments
Actually, it
spoke to
might
that,
be
and I
on
thought
yours.
that might be great to see if you've already addressed them.
I think it
And
should be on the other.
I
one.
think Craig could maybe.
Yeah, I was just going to look for what page it was on.
Yeah.
maybe if we want to move on with other questions, that could just work on
I
that in
don't
the
know which
background.
page.
And while we're trying to find that, Mr. Malozzi, if you have any other questions, you can continue.
I do not, other than appreciate the owner working with Lanta. It's I know there's already stops on the site, so to have shelters there and sidewalk connections is excellent for that corridor. That's why I think it's a pretty primary corridor that leads up to the Shanersville Road corridor as well too.
We're going to be improving both bus stops. So there's 2 along 8th Avenue, one down towards the Lowe's and then one up towards Eaton.
Both with shelters.
I believe that's what Molly would like, so we're going to try to accommodate that. Yes, so we're going to be working with her and trying to get that done.
Make Molly happy.
Yes.
Thank you.
She's been great to work with.
Nothing else from this, sir.
Mr. Pfeiffer, is that the,
That is on page 32. That you have it there. Okay, perfect.
So that includes.
So
Go
this is
ahead.
the overall plan, so we can start at the top because it's really difficult to see if we zoom out. And then just let me know when you want to see the rest.
And this plan would be both lighting and landscaping. That's why you see the red squiggly lines all over that, I assume.
The squiggles are electrical lines.
Yes, that's yeah. So do you want to go over?
I mean, is there a particular question you have? That's
Not in particular, but like I said, the comments, and then not for myself, but I assume there might be others interested in the tree planting. So that I guess running along 8th Avenue, or those trees or shrubs along that line there. Yes.
yeah. Those are larger trees, canopy trees to the left there. Yep. And then lower shrubbery there. And this is a revised plan. The initial plan, from the initial plan, we put in a different variety of more species in working with planning department and the forester. And we'll continue to do that. And this plan actually had the few comments that are in here we're addressing. There's a few more trees that need to be added. And then, like I said, if we can put some low vegetation in the islands, we'll look at that, but we just have to be cognizant of the impact of the snow. When it gets piled on those islands for 3 months, it can have a challenging effect for
So Ms. Heller, under forestry comment number 2, the city recommends add additional landscaping in the parking lot. See what is up there
Well, he's
beyond that?
yeah, he's specifically saying in those islands where street lighting is proposed. So you can see some of the islands don't have, I don't know if you can circle one of those with your pointer, Craig, to the right there, that it's, you can see there's a street light on there or a parking lot light. And so there's no trees there because it would block the light. But he's suggesting in islands like that, there could be low-lying shrubs or native plants, something like that to fill in so that it's not just the street light.
Yeah, and we'll coordinate with him and get some suggestions from the forester on what species he'd like to see there and what he thinks would be hardy enough to survive.
Thank you.
Any other questions by any planning commission members for Mr. Wagner? Anyone here in attendance like to make any comment on the land development subdivision plan for lots 1 and lot 2? Yes, sir. Please give your name and address for the record.
Bill Shire, 1890 Eaton Avenue. I couldn't quite hear for when I was sitting over there, but the drawings look as if both buildings are going to be 3 stories high. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm just wondering about the tenants that might move in there. Can you give us any indication as to who it might be? Would it be St. Luke's in all 4 corners, or would we get some head-to-head competition between LVHN and St. Luke's?
Lehigh Valley Hospital's on the rendering. It's Lehigh Valley
okay.
Hospital.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shire. Anyone else here in attendance have any comments or questions as it pertains to lots 1 and 2 of the Martin Tower site? Yes, if you don't mind, step to the podium, give your name and address for the record.
I'm Jane Cook. My address is 208 West Langhorne in Bethlehem. And looking at the overhead view that you were just showing of the buildings, I was slightly concerned that there are minimal green elements on the perimeter of each building. It's maybe, I see on the south side of the north building, there is some, and I don't see any
That was
other.
one of the comments in the city's letter, was to provide vegetation around the buildings, and we're gonna
Okay,
incorporate
great.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Anyone else? Again, obviously this is a very important tract of land in our city, and we're glad to see that there'll be some shovels in the ground hopefully sooner than later over there. And tonight we are focusing on lots 1 and lot 2. And from a conformity standpoint, everyone is familiar with the site. If you look around the surroundings, there are other medical office buildings, as Mr. Shire pointed out. Some of the competition, very similar in terms of size, very similar in terms of the parking that is being supplied and the way the parking rows are set up. I know that we talked about that in great length last time. So I would entertain, unless there's any other questions at this time from any planning commission members, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Question, just for
Mr.
clarification.
Malozzi, absolutely.
I understand that we would act on the subdivision and the land development simultaneously, but the elimination of a lot line that's shown there, is that significant for planning, for the commission to act on it?
Well, I mean, I view that as part of the subdivision.
That's-
It's a lot line adjustment and a subdivision, right? I mean, there are 2 parcels there currently, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so that's captured in the,
Yes.
okay.
Again, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the the subdivision and land development application at 1170 8th Avenue, contingent upon meeting all of the conditions set forth in the October 7th, 2022 review letter from the city of Bethlehem.
Mr. Malozzi, motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Burgos. Roll, please.
Mr. Malozzi,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Mr. Malosky.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. We appreciate you putting this time in and looking forward to getting some work done over there and moving forward. We'll see you again soon. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Our next agenda item is a zoning amendment, zoning ordinance amendments to address solar panel provisions. I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Heller at this time.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you want to do this. This amendment was actually drafted with a lot of volunteer work through the EAC committee. They worked with our office and also the Permits Bureau, and they put a little time into this. So they've already presented to City Council, and it's one of the elements of implementing climate action, et cetera. And I think the reason that it started, this amendment, was there was a desire, I believe, on the EAC to make it a little bit easier, make the ordinance more flexible so that individual property owners could put solar panels on their roofs. So, Lynn, do you want to present some of this, or are you okay with that?
Sure, if I can get this light to turn on. How do you turn this light on?
I think there's a button on the base that you push. Oh, I've never done it before myself.
It's very easy once you find it.
There it is.
I found it.
She found it.
It's too dark to find it.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here in person.
Thank you, Ms. Rothman. We appreciate you taking the time.
Sure. So I'm Lynn Rothman, 870 Wofford Lane, Bethlehem. And Ms. Heller had asked me to actually just give a little summary of how this all came about this evening and then summarize some of the ordinances. So in concert with the mission of the EAC and the goals of the Climate Action Plan, we want to encourage sustainability and the use of alternative energy within the city to reduce our overall carbon footprint. So it came to the EAC's attention from a resident that the city's current 3-foot setback on all sides of a solar system that's currently mandated caused several installers to say to him, oh, we can't really do a system. It's not feasible. It would be so small because of this 3-foot setback. And he did find a company finally, but the system was much smaller and produced less energy than it could have had the potential. We also, this, just so you know, this requirement is for safety and fire emergency personnel, so that if there's a fire, they can get on the roof and be able to walk around the system. However, by having this specification in the ordinance, there's no avenue for the system to be evaluated for safety on a case-by-case basis. And we had conversations with several solar installers who confirmed that Bethlehem's requirement for rooftop setbacks is much stricter than any of the other cities in the area. And it's unusually strict generally. So in the fall of 2021, the EAC Solar Committee reconvened to review and propose updates to the city's solar ordinance. Our committee worked with the Departments of Planning and Zoning, Code Enforcement, and the Fire Department in proposing changes to the ordinances. We also used the Bucks County Model Alternative Energy Ordinance and the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission Ordinance Framework as recommended by Alliance for Sustainable Communities summer interns in their report on implementing Bethlehem's Climate Action Plan as our main resources. So I'll start to go through just some of the major changes. So firstly, we recommended adding definitions in a new section B to make the ordinance more understandable, and we clarified some language throughout the ordinance.
And let me just say, if you want to follow with her, she's on page 4, I think, of the amendment that was submitted.
Now I'm on page 1 is the definitions. So I'll go through in order.
Right, but there's a sheet or a copy of the ordinance as it is now, and then there's a copy
okay.
of the new
Okay,
ordinance.
sorry.
So I thought if they want to follow your comments, they'd start on page 4.
Okay.
This is the first definition, Ms. Rothman, solar energy.
Yes, so previously there were no definitions. So
Got it.
this whole definition section is new.
Got it. Go ahead.
Okay, and so next, if you go to the new section C, or C number 5, which states that systems should be located so that removal of living trees is not required to the extent practical. That's also a new language. And then if you go on to, well, let me see which section. Section, let's see. So we did remove that requirement for the 3-foot setback from all roof ridges and edges on all sides. So instead, if you look at, where is this? Number 7. So that would be C7. Now the system just needs to be reviewed by the fire chief, as well as submitted and reviewed by the codes department. So that way the fire chief can now make a determination on a case-by-case basis, looking at the building in question as to determining fire access and fire safety. In C section 9, we recommend replacing the current section 7 and 8, which mandate that on steep and low-sloped roofs, solar devices shall be mounted so they are not visible from the street. And instead, we're proposing that only in the historic district or on a historic resource source property shall that visibility come into question. And in those areas, the systems will be evaluated for visibility by the Historic Architectural Review Board or the Historic Conservation Commission. And then the last major change is the very last section of the ordinance, number 7, which deals with abandonment and removal. So it currently states that if a system doesn't operate continuously for a period of 6 months, it should be considered abandoned and must be removed within 90 days. However, it's very difficult for the city to monitor this time frame and be aware of all these different systems. And in addition, if you have a system, maybe that's not operational because the building's being sold or no one's living there for a certain amount of time, the system may still be perfectly functional. And 8 months later, a year later, someone may then occupy the building and be able to use the system. So what we really did was put it under the city's nuisance ordinances, so that if instead the solar system is falling apart and there's a danger of it blowing off and hitting someone or something, or if it's rusted or an eyesore, then the nuisance ordinances would come into play and the city could take action. So those are the major changes, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about anything else.
Thank you, Ms. Rothman. We appreciate your time and energy putting this forward for the very important part of our moving forward with our environmental plan and trying to keep our world spinning in the right way. So, Ms. Heller, it's safe to say that this evening we are passing along these changes to council with our approval or disapproval. And correct, is that?
Yes, you make a recommendation to city council, and you can approve it as is. You can recommend that it not go forward, or you can recommend with revisions if you have any suggested revisions.
Any questions for Ms. Rothman or Ms. Heller as it pertains to the zoning amendment by planning commission members? Mr. Malozzi.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rothman, for spearheading, pulling this all together. A couple questions on the there's a provision that in here that the solar collection devices. This is page 6, so it is D as in David 4. Solar collection devices may extend a maximum of 15 feet above the maximum height limit and are permitted by right in all districts. The maximum height limit of a structure, like a building. So if a building was 3 stories, you could have a solar facility that goes 15 feet above that.
I can't
That's-
find that, but I believe that is correct.
Yeah, that's the way I would
It's-
interpret that, yes.
Okay. I guess there's a bit of a concern about the aesthetics when I just think about neighborhoods. That's 15 feet is almost another story. It's a story and a half actually on top of a building.
Mhm.
And we as planning commissioners, with the saldo and for zoning's part, we're charged with making sure that structures don't exceed that. Now this would seem that this, because solar proliferates like we all expect it to, that could be on a lot of rooftops in the city. And some of them aren't very attractive solar facilities. They're not made to be aesthetically pleasing. They're made to collect energy. So that's a concern that I would like to raise. Is I think also definitely in favor of renewable energy sources, in particular solar, for this discussion, but also the things that make Bethlehem, a nationally recognized community and its aesthetic pleasingness and everything else it has going for it. I just don't want to do something that would compromise some of that. So it's great that the HARB and the HCC would review this in their districts, but there's an awful lot of the city that would get no review of these things from an aesthetic standpoint, and then to allow basically a story and a half that's like a cell tower on your roof potentially.
That was existing language, and
Yeah.
so we
Right.
didn't
I
really
wanted
think
to point that
change
out,
it.
but I
I've
really,
no-
I'm glad Mr. Malozzi had pointed that out. I think back to some of the issues that were brought up when Lehigh University was their solar field. So, but just to clarify for the record, Ms. Rothman has not made that change as it pertains to setbacks and height restrictions. That is an existing part of that ordinance. Okay, so that might be something moving forward we want to change as well.
I apologize for attributing that to you.
Well, I mean, I didn't think to change it, so I'll take the fall. But
I would just point out too, on that same page 6, above there, 9, it talks about review by either HARB or HCC, but it does say flush mount of solar panels on sloped roofs shall be utilized where possible. So on a flat roof, you do need to tilt the panels in some way. They're all, they wouldn't be flat on the roof. So we're limiting the 15-foot height on a flat roof, basically. Maybe we should clarify that more in the language. But on a sloped roof, they should be as close to a flush mount as they can be. That's what we're shooting for. Yeah.
Is that something, Ms. Rothman, your group noticed as well? Was that something that stood out as a possible concern, the 15 feet? Or was it explained kind of just the way that Ms. Heller explained that?
to be honest, we didn't even discuss changing that section. It was there, and we just, I guess, assumed
Understood.
that's how the city does it. We would have no problem. I take it, your point, 15 feet does sound awfully high, and I've no problem if you recommend lowering that height. Or
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, give me your name. Yes, step forward, please.
Will Carpenter, 224 Wall Street.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
I just wanted to interject. I'm not an authority, but I have a little experience with this. And from my experience, nobody chooses to raise their solar panels 15 feet off their roof. It's a fire requirement so that a fireman can be up top and swing an axe. So in certain situations, like a flat roof, that's when this would come into play. But in my understanding, it's not a very typical situation. But just so you know where it came from, I think that's where it started.
fire safety. Yes, correct.
And possibly, Ms. Heller, from a verbiage standpoint, a wording standpoint, maybe that's something like you just said, we may want to add to that point for the reason Mr. Carpenter mentioned for fire
Mhm.
code reasons, but also maybe even reiterate the fact that on any slope roof, we would obviously prefer flush mounting.
Mhm.
I don't know, I always came from the more you mention it, the more it's mentioned, the more kind of get the point across,
Mhm.
even if it's redundant and, repetitive.
Mhm. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Malozzi? Yes.
Yes, please. If I understand correctly, and perhaps I don't, the fire chief or Bethlehem Fire Department would decide on a case-by-case basis the location of solar facilities on roofs in terms of the setback. Or
Yes, I think by code, you actually do have to have 3 feet on one side now.
Okay.
But he was wonderful. He really thought all along we were going to be flexible in this, I guess, when this ordinance was first suggested. And because it's so strictly in the zoning ordinance, people then don't really know they could go to him or alter their plans. But if you think about it, you would have no solar panels on the north side of the roof, or you may have roofs that have several heights and spaces so that the fire department really doesn't need to go, let's say, in the back to access the building, or maybe they probably wouldn't even put trucks back there, or it's just not required out of hand to do 3 feet on every side. And he was willing. He was the first person that we talked with, and he was willing to review all these plans.
Okay. The thing that came to mind, and if the fire chief is fine with this, it's his call, is that assuming that the installation of solar becomes prolific, it seems like that's wide open to a lot of interpretation. And I just wonder on a case-by-case basis if we start having, if there wasn't some regulation there, something in writing, maybe less specific than it is right now, there'll be potentially inconsistent application of whatever criteria happens to be being used that day when the plans are being done. So I would just hope that there isn't a complete absence of guidance on these things. I mean, that's why we have the zoning hearing board, is because you have to interpret what's there, and that has quite a lot of detail in it. So in the absence of detail, you're just wide open to interpretation. So yeah, that may work in someone's favor or not, depending on the person and the day, or somebody retires and someone new comes in and has a different view of things. So that might be a suggestion, is maybe to have some guidance, even if it's flexible.
Well, I mean, it does say that it has to comply with the Code Enforcement Office and fire, the most recent codes for both just code ordinances and fire ordinances. And as I said, I think it's already mandated that you have to have 3 feet on one side. The problem here was on all sides.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the solar installers themselves say, well, we want some guidance, but they have said that this is unusually restrictive in our area. And in fact, just a couple weeks ago, I got an email from a former EAC member who said, I see you're working on these solar ordinances. I wanted to put one on my roof. And they told me, oh, I have to have 3 feet on each side, and it wasn't going to be big enough, and what's going on. So you're right. A lot more people are getting solar, and this will help them. This does address more rooftop, not ground mounted systems, which is something that we can look at in the future, because you mentioned the Lehigh situation. Maybe we want to look at our setbacks and whatnot for ground mounted systems. But because this is heating up and there's a demand, we wanted to make these updates first, because this really will make a difference in the number of people that can get systems.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
their size.
So for practical purposes, it falls back on the Uniform Construction Code. That's the minimum standard that will be followed.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And to your point about ground mounted, yes, that that lack of codified detailed ordinance on something of that scale. So I hope that's something that maybe your group will take a look at.
Well, we'll go back to the drawing board on that with the help of the Planning and Zoning Department.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Any other members? Mr. Burgos, anything? Ms. Heller, anything else to add from Ms. Rothman's comments?
I think that
Attorney Dashler.
has.
Attorney
something.
Dasher?
Yes, I had some questions. I think this is a change. What is the meaning of a historic resource property?
I'm actually embarrassed to say I'm not sure. We took that from some language from another ordinance.
It may.
I guess it may be just a building that's not actually in the historic district. Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's a building that's not in the historic district, but it may be from the 1800s.
Well, I
Something like
think
that,
we
or-
have to be pretty specific. So it could be a building that's individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Yeah,
Because there'll be a lot of old buildings that aren't really historic, but we could clarify that if that meets your. concern.
there's a definition of historic structure in the zoning ordinance that is any structure that is listed individually in the National or Pennsylvania Register of Historic Places or primarily designated or determined by the Secretary of the Interior as meeting the requirements for individual listing on the National Register, certified or preliminarily determined by the Secretary of the Interior as contributing to the historical significance of a registered historic district or a district preliminarily determined by the Secretary to qualify as a registered historic district or individually listed in Bethlehem's inventory of historic places under a historic preservation program that is included in the historic preservation plan. I mean, if that definition satisfies what we're attempting to do by historic resource property, why don't we just say historic structure? Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. And even with historic district, I mean, we should define that in terms of the Harbor HCC. I mean, I think it's suggested that way, but maybe be more specific because we don't define historic district in the zoning ordinance either.
Okay, we'll just name the two historic districts.
I think that works.
Okay.
So just so we're all on the same page, in number 9 on page 6, Ms. Heller, Attorney Dasher pointed out that design of the solar energy systems within a historic district or on a historic resource property. We're going to change that to historic structure. Is that correct, Attorney Dasher?
I think that would work.
Mhm.
I understand. If
Is that the only-
Rothman is okay with that.
Is that the only change in number 9 that you had mentioned?
In number 9, yes, I
Okay.
saw some other things that we might just want to bring to everyone's attention. One is on page 6. There's a reference to solar collection devices, and solar and collection are both capitalized, which generally means it's a defined term. That's not defined anywhere, and I'm not sure what's meant by solar collection devices. If we mean the same thing as solar energy systems, we probably should just say so. Do we?
Yeah, that was something that we hadn't changed, but you can certainly make the C lowercase or just say solar arrays or solar energy
Okay.
systems.
These questions aren't so much critiques as just wanting to clarify things.
Right,
I don't
sure.
know anything about this stuff. So if we mean solar energy systems, we could just change that.
Well, actually, this is the one you're talking about. Yeah, right.
I mean, even if it's not a change from the prior ordinance, if we're taking the opportunity to
Right.
clarify things,
Mhm.
we might as well take the opportunity. I would imagine that, I mean, Darlene, do you know, do we intend it to mean the same thing?
I think we do. I would say
Yeah, I mean, I
solar
think it's
energy
fine.
system or solar panels.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, I think when they say solar collection.
And the collection devices are the actual panels that
Yeah.
are
There's
either
wiring and
elevated,
conduit too, but
right?
it's the panel that would be raised up. This is the provision or the section about 15 feet.
I certainly understand Attorney Deschler's concern. Obviously, if we're passing this along to council, let's make sure we get it right. Ms. Rothman has put in a lot of time and energy with this, and we want to make sure we have the wording the right way.
so
Maybe-
solar panels,
Maybe that's
lowercase p.
it's a solar related equipment. Does that make more sense?
That could make more sense.
I mean,
Yeah, the equipment might be more.
I think we can, why don't we just slip that term right in there?
That'll be solar related equipment.
Well, the equipment could be, well, I guess it's the cables or the.
Yeah, but that's
or-
okay.
So
They're not
that's
gonna-
all, okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
they're not going to be more than 15 feet. That term is used in provision about 15 feet above the
Right.
roof. So
Yeah,
the conduit, et cetera, would be underneath.
I mean, you could add something in there. It does say a maximum of 15 feet. And you could say something about if that's necessary or justified, to your concerns about why would it have to be so high.
I mean, I noticed that solar energy system is part of the definition of that includes an energy system that consists of one or more solar collection devices,
Mhm.
right? Which we don't define, but then that appears again elsewhere in capitalized fashion, suggesting that it has a specified definition.
Yes.
Okay, maybe it's just something to think about. I either replace that with solar related equipment or just solar energy system.
Yeah, let's change it.
Okay.
Let's change it. That's
How about
Noted.
how about on paragraph
Keep going.
11 under subsection C?
11.
It's on page 6.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
At the end,
Mhm.
it ends with maintained under the solar system. Underneath the solar system. But I assume we mean the SCS there, right?
solar energy system.
Yes.
Yes.
You're not encompassing this in the
Venus, Mars.
universe, Attorney Deschler. We are not.
Very good.
I don't know if the city zoning ordinance would extend in jurisdiction to that degree.
Sorry.
don't?
Trust the
I mean,
man with the law degree to
it's
make
a-
sure the
it's a
wording
good
is
zoning
correct.
ordinance.
Trust him.
Okay.
So we have that noted as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rosario.
I think
Attorney
this-
Deschler, anything else in terms of the wording?
The only other things, similar to what I said before, there are points where it looks like we are using capitalized terms to provide a specific meaning, and then elsewhere we don't capitalize them when we're using the terms. Maybe when we review this before council, we might clean it up such that we are keeping the capitalized defined terms consistent with what's used elsewhere in the body. of the ordinance.
Ms. Rosario, make a note for the record as we do pass this along to City Council. If they were to analyze the grammatical appearance in terms of words used in coordinates with what we need, right? Be consistent, as Attorney Deschler is stated. Anyone here in attendance else want to comment on anything as it pertains to the zoning amendment that we are recommending with or without approval to City Council? Anyone here in attendance? We really appreciate. This is something obviously we as well are trying to move forward, and the people here in attendance are much appreciated for you to come out this evening. Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Rothman.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Heller.
I'll just also note briefly, we also have a letter from the LVPC. They review
Yes.
zoning and Saldo text amendments. Although they do note that this is a matter of local concern, the summary is that overall the proposed amendments support renewable energy and diversification of sources to reduce climate change impacts. The LVP supports the city of Bethlehem's goals of a sustainable and climate resilient community, and thanks the city for continuing to demonstrate evolution and adaptability of government. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. We're on the right track.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, we are making a recommendation this evening to City Council in reference to the zoning amendments as it addresses the solar panel provisions. We have Mr. Rosario has a lot of comments that we addressed. So Attorney Deschler, as we are moving forward, is it an issue, any motion that is made addresses the comments in general that we put forth to Mr. Rosario that she has noted?
I think it's appropriate to frame the motion in that way. Yes.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to forward the proposed amendments to city's zoning ordinance, and specifically Article 1318.29, along with the comments that were generated by the discussion this evening at the October 13th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting.
Motion made by Mr. Malozzi, and I will second that. Roll, please.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Mr. Malosky,
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi.
Yes.
Thank you again, Ms. Rothman, and moving forward, we appreciate it, and everyone's involvement is thankful for. Thank you. Mr. Malone.
Yes. Are we to understand that it was the environmental advisory committee that initiated this and drafted it?
They did.
Which is anytime citizens, I mean, we're all citizens, we're appointed citizens that live in the city, but that sort of initiative and putting in the work and reading zoning ordinances, which is exciting business, but spend the time to do that and craft this language and present it in this format is very much appreciated. More people should do these things. Thank
And
you.
if we can make sure that's noted when it is presented to council, that the efforts of the EAC and Ms. Rothman is highlighted, please. Thank you. Our last agenda item is any discussion items. I don't know, Ms. Heller, if you need to go over any of the submissions that are in the hole, if there are anything we need to cover.
Not much has changed. Honestly, you've had quite a few land developments in the last couple of months, so I'm not really sure what you're going to be able to review in November. There may be a couple on Linden Street that we're reviewing now, but mostly the projects have been pretty cleaned up.
Okay.
We are full staff now. Craig's been working in the assistant planning director position. We have hired Paige Stefanelli in the zoning officer position. So I keep saying it publicly so that I have to do it, but we're going to get back on the saldo now.
I was just about to ask, where do we stand with the
Try to
saldo?
wrap that up.
Right.
So what I'd like to do is have something to you. There were a couple of things that we wanted to clarify. One was, what are the cap revisions that have been included? And the other thing, we talked with council and internally about including some design guidelines in the saldo that have recently come out of the zoning ordinance. So they're not large changes, but it's very detail oriented. We need to make sure it's accurate and everything. So we'll get back to you as soon as we can. to
The
get that
climate
back on
action
track.
plan, I remember there's some real good discussion on that. And I know that
Yes.
was part of what will be implemented. So
Okay.
anything else? Any other questions for the committee, your group? Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Malozzi. Thanks for coming out tonight. Stay dry, as you can hear it is really coming out.